Hey everybody, it's Pastor James, and I'm here to facilitate some small group conversation. This is going to be a recap from our sermon. You can listen to that online if you'd like on our YouTube page. But essentially, we are coming to the end of our sermon series on relationships called Relationship Restart. Really, our small groups are going to last this week and next week, and then this series is over, and so your small group can be discussing what's going to be happening with that. But this last Sunday, we talked about ordinary intimacy. We wanted to talk about intimacy in all the relationships in our life, and we will get to the end talking about what marital intimacy, how that plays a part in what we're talking about. The problem we decided was we live in a world that prioritizes prosperity over people, prioritizing prosperity over people. I don't know if you've seen that or if that's true in your life, but that's the question I have for you to discuss. Have you seen this to be true? And what have you seen? Examples of that. Feel free to pause and discuss now. Excellent. Thank you so much. Usually we give 3 points in a sermon, and the first point we wanted you to know was that you were made for close relationships. You were made for it. It is in your DNA. It is God's design for your life. Here's the verse we used. Remain in my love, Jesus says, and love each other as I have loved you. Not only does Jesus want us to have close relationship with him, but Jesus wants us to have close relationships with each other. And this command that Jesus gives us isn't just for people and families, or even necessarily people who are married to one another. Jesus is giving this to a group of 30-year-old dudes, and there's a larger set of disciples outside of that. He's giving this to people who aren't related at all, but he desires deep relationships for us. We talked about the study, showed a clip of it. It's really great TEDx talk. You might be able to find it under that name, Robert Waldinger. He's the fourth director of a Harvard study that spanned 75, 80 years. It's an incredible lifelong study. There aren't many like it. And his quote is this: the clearest message we get from this 75-year study is this: good relationships keep us happier and healthier, period. So here's your question. If it's important enough for Jesus to command it, and the science affirms it's true, why can it be so hard for us to prioritize relationships, especially close ones sometimes? Feel free to pause and discuss now. Lovely. Here's the second point we wanted to take away from this, that God wants for us intimacy in friendship, family, and in our faith family, in churches. The verse we used was this is my commandment, love each other. And Jesus says, I call you friends because everything I heard from my Father I've made known to you. We see Jesus talking about intimacy between the faith family here, closeness. We're not only servants or disciples, but Jesus wants to talk about us as friends. We said this: Jesus is the source and the model of the loving intimacy that he wants for us to have, not only with himself, but with each other. We said a bunch of things about intimacy that I thought were important. In a book called Friendtimacy, about friendship intimacy, she said this is the most important question. This: how loved and supported do you feel is determinative of the quality of life that you're going to have. More important than physical health even. And this was the definition we had of friendship: any relationship between two people where they can both feel seen and safe in a satisfying way. I have a bunch of questions here just to facilitate conversation. Feel free to answer any or all of them, but I thought this was such an important point. So who are some of the close friends that you have, and why do you think you're close? Feel free to share about yourself here. Why do you think, do you feel loved and supported is so important to our physical, emotional, and spiritual health? And lastly, seen, safe, satisfying. Talk about this. Would you add anything to this definition? Is there one thing that you can think would be most important for you out of those, seen, safe, and satisfying? Feel free to pause and discuss now. Excellent. Last point. We were going to talk about marital intimacy, physical intimacy. This can be an awkward conversation. If your small group decides they want to skip it, feel free. But we're going to talk about marriage and romantic relationships. 1 Corinthians 7, Paul says this to us: husband should meet his wife's sexual needs, and the wife should do the same for her husband. And he says, I'm not saying this as a command. I'm saying this to give you permission. So this shouldn't be a verse that people use to exploit one another, to objectify one another, to make people do what they don't want to do. Paul is giving us permission to enter into this relationship because Paul wants for us in our marriages to have intimacy. He wants us to have all of the above. He wants us to have that friendship intimacy, that seen, safe, satisfying, that close relationship, but also adding to it passionate physical intimacy, because the Bible's stance on sex is that sex is good. There are healthy boundaries that the church puts on it. In fact, all the major religions of the world put healthy boundaries on sex because sex is a powerful force for covenant renewal, where you say to each other, I wholly belong exclusively to you. It's a self-giving act of covenant renewing that is to be kept in healthy and safe boundaries that the church has usually defined as marriage. Here's my question. It's more lighthearted than the topic is, but I want to admit the church has not done a great job at talking about sex and physical intimacy. How would you like to see the church in America approach this conversation of physical intimacy in the future? Feel free to have that conversation or not, up to your small group. Feel free to pause and discuss now. Lovely. As always, we do a spiritual practice. And the spiritual practice this week was that relationships require intentionality and consistency. If you want the depth, the intimacy that God wants for you in all of your relationships, you have to build trust. And trust is built on consistency and intentionality. And so I guess my question for you this week around that is, what relationship would you like to add consistency and intentionality to this week/month? And how would you do that? How are you thinking about doing that? And as you get ready to discuss that, I'm going to part for the rest of the evening praying for you as you are meeting in small group. We appreciate you being here. Blessings and bye.